Comrades Marathon Association has just announced the cancellation of the ultramarathon's Centenary race. The race was due to be held on the 13th of June, but due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, organisers have decided to call it off. Well, for more on this developing story, we're joined live via Zoom by the Comrades Marathon Association Chairperson, Cheryl Winn. Thank you very much, Cheryl, for joining us. So how are you going to make up for this cancellation? I mean, you're turning 100 this year.
Well, obviously, it was an extremely painful decision to have to make, and it's one that we've agonized over for a number of weeks. When we closed our office at the beginning of December, things were still looking reasonably positive. We were still hopeful that we would be able to stage this race, having had to cancel it in 2020. This Centenary race, we've been planning for over 2 years now. We had wonderful, sort of celebratory things that we wanted to implement this year. And when we came back in the middle of January, by then the situation had deteriorated so drastically that, really this decision was ultimately, the only one that we could have taken. So it's very disappointing, but, obviously it's the only decision we could have taken. We need to prioritize the health, safety and welfare of our runners as well as our volunteers and our officials and, at the end of the day, our fellow South Africans. So, it was inevitable, but we need to make the best of the situation. And so we will take the same date, the Sunday, the 13th of June, on which we would have staged our traditional Comrades Marathon and would have been our Centenary race. We will go ahead and we will once again stage a virtual event. We'll be making announcements about the nature, the name, and some of the innovations that we'll be implementing for that virtual race. Last year we staged a virtual race on the same day that we should have staged the 95th Comrades Marathon, and it by far exceeded our wildest expectations. It really caught the imagination of our runners and the public. We attracted 47,800 odd participants, which was way beyond our wildest dreams. These were runners completely throughout South Africa and around the world. And we hope that, this year last year we put the event together in a matter of 4 to 5 weeks after we cancelled the 2020 Comrades Marathon. This year we have 4 months to plan, and we are certainly hoping to make it bigger, better, more attractive, and much more festive than it was last year. And so we are even hopeful that we may even be able to double the number of participants that took place that participated last year.
Now,
in addition, we'll also.
I was going to say, Cheryl, in this day and age, these days, when people take decisions or institutions take decisions or the government takes decisions, you're doomed if you do and you're doomed if you don't. So based on what you know, how do you think that, Comrades runners are going to take this decision?
Well, I think there are tens of thousands of runners that are going to be desperately disappointed. But, I'm also hopeful that they'll realize that this was the only reasonable and responsible decision that we could have made. We obviously are in constant communication with our runners through social media and newsletters, et cetera, et cetera. And, I think the decision has been fairly widely anticipated. Of course, runners are going to be disappointed. And in particular, our hearts go out to, the elite runners, because for those runners, it's actually their livelihood. And it's just one of those painful things. At the end of the day, you have to prioritize health, safety, and welfare of above sport. It's just and especially an event of the nature of Comrades Marathon, where you have we had hoped to attract 34,000 runners for this year's event, and there's no ways we could assemble 34,000 runners shoulder to shoulder outside the Pietermaritzburg City Hall. It would have been it was just completely out of the question.
Yes.
ASA has come out with protocols for the opening or for the staging of events, athletic events, and at the moment the ASA protocols indicate that a maximum of 150 or 250 participants. So, I mean, an event in which we had hoped to attract 34,000, obviously we couldn't squeeze that into 250 participants.
Very difficult indeed. Now, of course, the Comrades Marathon is, but one day where an event takes place. But in the lead up to it, of course, there'll be a lot of stuff that's going on, preparation, administration, and so on. So how has COVID-19 affected the business of the Comrades Comrades Marathon Association in the background?
Well, to be honest, a year ago, let's say at the beginning of March last year, we were very advanced in our preparations for the 2020 Comrades Marathon. This year, having learned a painful lesson, we have held back, and we had worked out the minimum period lead time that we needed in order to place orders for the various goods and services and confirm venues and things like that. So we haven't laid out a lot of cash, and normally we would have, in a normal year, we would have already sold our entries in September, October of the preceding year. This year, we obviously didn't do that because of the uncertainty. We were hoping to have opened entries in February. So, this year the runners are not going to be stung in that they have not yet entered the race, and we have not laid out, any particularly huge amount of cash or committed a huge amount of our resources at this stage. So we have held back, and we do, it is a secondary consideration, but a very important one, that we need to preserve the resources that we have. It's a 100-year-old institution, and we as the CMA board feel that it is our obligation to preserve the resources that we have so that we are able to resurrect this magnificent event when the COVID crisis has eventually passed.
Yeah.
Look, and we're able to resume. Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion around whether we will ever actually go back to normal, just in terms of the way people behave and their appetite to be in crowds and all of that, even when we have herd immunity, when we've all been vaccinated. In terms of what we have experienced with COVID-19, what lessons have you drawn from this experience that you'll take forward when we go to more of a normal situation?
Well, I think, even in our planning, our advanced planning for what would have been the 2021 Comrades Marathon, we had realized that we were going to have to make significant changes in terms of the way we organized our start. We were looking at things like a wave start, in which, we set off groups of runners in sort of 5 to 10 minute intervals, so that we didn't have these big crowds of 34,000 runners shoulder to shoulder in front of the Pietermaritzburg City Hall. So we were looking at implementing things like a wave start. We were also looking at things like immediate dispersal at the finish. We were looking at making significant changes to the manner in which we staged our refreshment stations, and all those kind of things. We've done a lot of research and planning in that regard already, and we will adapt as and when we're able to stage an event.
So, Cheryl, lastly, of course, you're speaking to very disappointed marathon runners, but what's your message to the runners around as they look forward to doing the virtual participation? What's your message to them?
Well, we invite them all to be part of our virtual event. I personally ran it last year, and the atmosphere out on the road was absolutely phenomenal. It was this wonderful feeling of solidarity, and we certainly encourage our runners to be part of it again. In addition to that, we just encourage them to continue to maintain their levels of fitness. I mean, it's not just the fitness does not only contribute towards a good comrades, but it contributes to your general health and welfare. So we're encouraging our runners to continue to maintain their fitness, so that when the sport of road running does eventually resume and events are able to be staged again, that they're fit and ready, and hopefully there'll be a reasonably smooth transition back to some kind of new normality, or whatever is the new normality.
Thanks very much, Cheryl.
And we will.
Carry on.
Okay, thank you. No, and I was going to say, from our side, we will do everything we can to continue to keep in touch with our runners, to keep them abreast of developments, and and connected and engaged, and still feeling part of a greater road running community.
For what it's worth, happy Centenary. Thank you very much, Cheryl Winn. She's the Comrades Marathon Association chairperson, chatting to us about the cancellation of the Centenary edition of the Comrades Marathon, which was due to be held on the 13th of June. All right, we're going to go for a quick break. We'll have more news for you thereafter.